Hello everybody, if I could just get in the studio now, we can start the tier list. Help! Somebody! Whew, that was close. I managed to throw the next door neighbour's dog in the way.
There's a dead dog in here.
So anyway, welcome to Prime Time Mitch, and today is a Halloween special. I will be tier listing all 13 of the movies from the Halloween franchise, started by John Carpenter in 1978. Let's look at the tier list and the categories that these movies will be falling into. Okay, so we'll start at the top. The very first one is going to be Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, Michael.
This is a movie that is personally giving me a very happy experience, a very happy Halloween experience, and is up there with my favourites and, in my opinion, the best of the series. Coming in just below it, One Good Scare.
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
This is a movie that I enjoyed. I thought stood up as a good Halloween movie, a good installment in the franchise, and did a lot of good for the storyline. Or it was just an enjoyable road, and I would watch it again. Coming in third down, As a Matter of Fact.
As a matter of fact.
This is a movie that was decent. Stands up as a Halloween film. We'll probably watch it again, but not really one of the better ones. It sort of sits in the middle and it's okay. The penultimate tier, If You Say So.
If you say so.
A movie that I didn't enjoy, probably wouldn't watch again. It had its moments, it had some redeeming qualities, but overall wasn't a good entry into the franchise. And coming in last, The Evil Is Gone.
The evil is gone.
Basically no redeeming qualities, or little redeeming qualities, and ones that I personally don't care for, wouldn't watch again at all, and don't think did any good to the story and the saga. Basically didn't belong in the magic of Halloween. Before I start, remember to smash a like on this video and check out all my other reviews and rankings that I've done so far. I haven't been going long, but I'm enjoying the ride up to now, and I've got loads more content to give you. This is a personal opinion video. This is my personal favourites. Doesn't have to be yours, certainly won't be yours, I don't think. Please tell me what your favourites are, what you disagree with, what you agree with. Even give me a tier list of your own. I'm happy to discuss in the comments exactly why I feel like I do in more greater detail than you're going to see on this video. But let's get straight to it, and let's kick off with the first movie. We start in 1978. The original Halloween, directed by John Carpenter, produced by Deborah Hill. This one is an easy pick for Happy Halloween. I don't think many people argue with this. It's one of those franchises where the original really stands up as the best to many people. Others, such as Friday the 13th sometimes, or Final Destination, sometimes the sequels are preferred to the original. This one is unanimously usually not the case. It's the immovable object as far as I'm concerned. It is a perfect example of simple can be effective. It has a nice slow build up which keeps you interested. It never drags. You have a lot of scenes in broad daylight which are very creepy because of that fact. Certainly behind the hedge and behind the sheets, when she's looking through the window, you still get that feeling of dread, despite the fact that it's the daytime. You get minimal Michael Myers, just glimpses of him here and there, suggestions of him here and there, and that is just as terrifying, if not more. What I love about the original concept of Halloween is the complete lack of reasoning behind what Michael is and what he does. You've got Dr. Loomis there, brilliantly played by Donald Pleasance, who is helpless to Michael. Really, he can only do the inevitable, and that's attempt to kill him, because there is nothing more can be done for him mentally. He can't get in his head, he can't change him, and it's just the fact that this was a simple boy who was born bad, and that's what I think. Obviously we'll talk about the sequels further down the line, but I think it lost it when they tried to explain him a little more. It's a perfect score. We get introduced to that beautiful music right from the off. You don't have a badass final girl in Laurie Strode, played famously by Jamie Lee Curtis. She is a babysitter turned protector. She is there to try and improvise and help the kids she's there to protect. She was only supposed to look after them, not to try and save their lives. And it's a really nice thing that we have this innocent girl having to really defend herself throughout, and it's very much more relatable than the kick-ass final girl you often see. It is a masterpiece without the need for gore or OTT effects, and it sits right at the top of the tree in Happy Halloween. Now on to 1981's sequel, Halloween 2. Potentially going to take a pelting for this, but I'm going to put this in the category of as a matter of fact. Now, I am not as big a fan of this sequel as many people are. It starts off strongly enough. I love the continuation from the first night, so it's just like an extension on the first movie. I think that's really unique. There's none of this, you know, so many years later, it literally starts where it finished in the first, which I think is really interesting. That had me, when I noticed that, there's a really nice shot in the kitchen of him standing behind the woman after he takes the knife. Again, it was just a real classic Halloween shot. It wasn't a perspective, but it was out of the window. It was showing just how vulnerable this woman was. But I think when the hospital segment begins, I start losing it a little bit. I'd like the streets of Haddonfield. I love that peaceful neighbourhood being disturbed kind of thing about Halloween, so I was never too happy with the majority of this film being in the hospital. I thought the Ben Tramer segment was ludicrous. I've watched it again, and they do explain that he's drunk, but I still think if you had police aiming guns at you, you would take your mask off. You wouldn't just turn and walk away in a different direction. It just made no sense to me. The effect was great when he got hit with a car, but I just didn't like that part of the film. I thought it was a bit silly. I think the score is different and nice. It's a little overused at the beginning, but it does sound good, and it just separates it slightly from the first one. It does maintain some good suspense throughout. I will say that it does have the same sort of suspense feel as the first. You do get that dread and you do get that fear. The bit that really kills it for me, and if this was a second film and the last film in this timeline, then it might be slightly higher on the list. Laurie shooting Michael in the eyes. He's bleeding from the eyes. He would quite clearly be blinded. He couldn't see to stab her. You can't bring him back after that unless he's a blind man. And I can suspend disbelief, and I love doing that for horror, and I urge people to do it a lot of the time. But that one, it sticks in my heart. I can't get past the fact that he's literally been shot in the eyes, and that he comes back years later and he can see, and he's perfectly able to judge everything around him. Shot him in the shoulder, in the chest, anywhere else. But the effect looks great with the blood coming out the eye holes. But if it's the last in the timeline, it makes sense. It isn't, and that really gets to me on this one. So yeah, Halloween 2 isn't one of my favourites. Probably would be higher if it was just 1 and 2 on their own and that was it. But I can't get into it as much as I can some of the others. Now, the third instalment of Halloween, we all know, was a completely different story, not involving Michael Myers. I think it was very strange how they made a sequel to the first when they wanted to change the story completely going forward and make like an anthology kind of thing, different Halloween stories. So I don't know why they continued the first and the second one and didn't just create a different story altogether. We might have had a very different franchise up to now if that was the case. But I'm going to put Halloween 3 up in Happy Halloween. Now, this film has got more love over the last few years than it did initially. I think because people just sat down and watched it as a horror movie without thinking that it's part of the Halloween franchise. When you watch it as a standalone horror, it is beautifully shot. Some fantastic practical effects, really underrated practical effects. It is a little corny, maybe that's what it is, maybe it isn't visceral enough for people, but it certainly is effective. It's a tremendous story, an excellent idea having like a killer production company making Halloween toys that are dangerous and deadly to children. I mean, that's a twisted plot line, and when you sort of watch it as it is, and you forget that Michael Myers is involved in the rest of the saga, and you take this movie as just Season of the Witch and not Halloween 3, this becomes something else. I strongly believe that maybe if they had made Halloween 2 as a completely separate story and followed it with Season of the Witch, and we'd had those 3 separate films, this would be seen as a classic horror movie. Season of the Witch, I think, deserves its place up in Happy Halloween, and I urge you to watch it, if only to watch it with a different mindset. Coming up next, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. I make no secret, this is one of my absolute favourite movies of the series. I am going to put Halloween 4 up in Happy Halloween, the third installment I'm going to put in that category. It looks like Halloween right from the off. It has that wonderful grainy autumnal feel right from the beginning. It's almost like going back to the first one again. Now this was the start of the bizarre Cult of Thorn trilogy, so a lot of people might sort of knock it down for that, but it doesn't have any of those aspects just yet. You have that fantastic journey back to Haddonfield that Michael takes, involving the gas station and that wonderful shot of Loomis seeing him in the back room with the bandaged head. One criticism I always see about this movie, and this may be something to debate, and I don't see many people actually making reference to this, but the mask is a big problem in this movie. But if you look at the journey he makes back to Haddonfield, he goes to a store and he picks out a cheap knockoff Michael Myers mask, which has obviously been made as sort of a joke to the town's history before, and he takes that off the shelf and that's what he uses. He is literally using a cheap version of his own mask. So I get why the mask looks like it does. It might not look great, but that's why. If he'd have come back with the same mask as the first one, where did he get it? I don't see a problem with that mask like everyone else does. I do get it doesn't look that great, but there's a reason why it doesn't look great. Though the pink mask with the blonde hair in the one section is stupid. That's inexcusable. You can't have a different mask all of a sudden just for one scene. You make sure there's some continuity there. Jamie is introduced, a young girl that gives that vulnerability, that sort of gives you an unsettled feeling that this young girl who shouldn't be experiencing anything like that is having to go through a night of hell. And Rachel is a fantastic character, really in the mould of Laurie Strode, but a little stronger. She is driven by protection for Jamie. She's got a bit of a badass side to herself when she disposes of a jerk boyfriend. The police chief is good. He is a tough guy. He's likeable. The mob mentality we see in this movie is far more in keeping with what it should be. It's more realistic than Kills, as we'll get onto that. And we have that fantastic finish with Jamie taking over Michael's evil nature and attacking her stepmother, and Loomis is screaming at the end. Fantastic finish. I love Halloween 4. And we move swiftly on, and probably too swiftly in the timeline back then. Halloween 5. I'm going to drop this one in The Evil Is Gone. I am not a fan of this movie. I can't forgive it for so many things. It is the most ridiculous cluster. The fact he immediately has a different mask. From the moment he falls through the shaft and into the water, his mask has changed. There is no excuse for that. I said there was an excuse for the 4 masks not being great. If it was somewhat similar, I would have been okay with it, but it was nothing like. Then they piss you further off by killing off Rachel unceremoniously, badly as well. It is not even a good kill. Apparently the actress didn't want a gratuitous kill. I think the scissors were supposed to go down the throat initially, but I think that would have been better. At least she'd have had a gruesome death we could talk about that was deserving of her character. And nobody seems to give a damn when she goes. Nobody cares. There's no upset or grief over it. It's a complete joke. We get Jamie as a mute, which is horribly wasting what we created in 4. Everything that 4 did so well, 5 completely dismantles. So we got a dead Rachel, a mute Jamie, and we get Tina in her place, who I...
Open up! Oh, come on. Ooh, you're blushing.
I suppose you've only got to watch Cody Leach's videos to know the feeling on Tina, certainly from him and from me. The most irritating character, could never have been a heroine of any kind in that movie. There are a couple of good kills. The guy in the garage, I think that looked really good. The effects look fantastic there. It has its moments. The Jamie chase scene works well. It is a mess. They humanise Michael. And yet he's just shown that he is a supernatural force practically when he is blasted with various guns of different kinds into that mine shaft or into that grave shaft or whatever it is that he falls through. How can you then humanise him and show feelings in him with regards to Jamie after it? They absolutely destroy Loomis in this movie. He is as unlikable as possible, which is a complete crime and something that Donald Pleasance was not happy about. He too also described the dismantling of the 4th movie and the potential that had as being pretty criminal as well. So I am not a fan of 5, and I'm sorry, some people do like this movie, but it's right at the bottom for me. Now we move on to 6, and this is another one that divides opinion. Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. Now, obviously we are left with that sort of hinting with the man in black at the end of 5, so they had to go somewhere with it. I feel sorry for 6 in a way. I am going to put Halloween 6 in If You Say So. It's not quite down there with the worst. I think it has some redeeming qualities. I think by now they're trying to justify 5. It's not as bad as many people thought at the time, I don't think, upon rewatch. Certainly if you watch the producer's cut, that is far, far better, makes far more sense. It is quite a brutal movie. Even though it is a mess by this point and the cult storyline is confusing, we're just hoping for something interesting. I think Halloween 6 delivers that. A very, very brutal and frightening Myers. George P. Wilbur plays a very relentless, unforgiving Michael in this movie. He's certainly bulked up as well. He does not mess around with the kills. Some of the most graphic we see in the franchise, up to this point, certainly happen in this movie. They have some fantastic shots in this film as well. Michael standing outside the window, which I thought was terrifying when I was younger, because I had a kitchen window which was open plan and you could see out into the garden, and the spotlight used to come on it whenever somebody walked near the door. And the shot of Michael coming out up the stairs out of the basement in the fog, another great shot. It has things going for it. Paul Rudd puts in a gutsy performance. For a first performance, you'd have thought he'd have played it safe in case, you know, he looked a bit over the top or a little too theatrical, but he really put everything into this, and I've got to give him props for that.
But this time I'll be ready.
It is overly complicated, it's a little bit silly, the incest angle just does not work, it's weird. Myers in the cult, in that room with the candles, it just looks out of place. People should not be near Michael Myers. He's like a rattlesnake in the desert or a shark in the water, you get as far away from him as possible. But it is not a bad horror movie, and I urge you to watch the producer's cut before you give it a rating. Now we move on 3 years, and it's very, very different. It's Halloween H2O, 20 years later. And this movie, I am going to put up in One Good Scare. This is a very different film. Now, I have used reasons to put Halloween 2 down in the rankings, the fact that it was away from Haddonfield. This one, that's probably what hurts the movie and keeps it away from the top spot for me. The fact that most of it is shot in California, I think, or that it's implied California. You don't get much Haddonfield reference at all. That's a down mark on the movie. But I get it to a degree because Laurie Strode has moved on. She wants to get as far away from Haddonfield as possible, because who wouldn't? But the movie does very much have the feeling of The Faculty or Urban Legend. It is very obviously late 90s. It does feel sometimes like it's copying Scream a little, which is disappointing really, because Halloween is such a big entity in the horror world. It shouldn't be copying any movie, let alone a brand new one. I have no idea why so many masks were needed for this movie, and the CGI one is unforgivable. But it has a great score used at the right times, in particular in the standoff in the alley. And at the conclusion, it has a fantastic introduction. One of my favourite intros in a Halloween movie, with the pictures on the wall and the voice of Dr. Loomis, and a great kill as well to start the movie. They have solid characters that you can get behind. They are teen characters in the mould of Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer and those movies at that time, but they are likeable and they are pretty solid. The only character that really irks me is Will, and mainly after this line.
My brother killed my sister when she was 17.
Well, that's sucky.
Somebody pours their heart out to you and that's what you come back with. You need to back it and not sleeping with. Jamie Lee Curtis in this movie is excellent. Many people say that this is her best Laurie Strode depiction, and it comes to a perfect conclusion. For many Halloween fans, this was the only way to kill Michael. The sound that goes with it, everything is very realistic and very raw, and a wonderful finale to what was a very enjoyable movie. It's a very fun watch. Despite it feeling less like Halloween than the ones before, I really do enjoy this movie, and I didn't think I would do at the time. Gonna be a difficult one, this. I don't even like saying the name of the movie. Halloween Resurrection from 2002. A very good year as well. It's a shame that this had to be part of it. Easy one. Get right down there in the evil as well and truly gone. Halloween Resurrection climbs to the rafters and takes a steaming over everything that has gone before. I've said before, I don't hate many movies really with a passion. If you watch my Final Destination tier list, you will find the other one that I hate with a passion. I don't like films that disrespect what's been before and the story and the characters. They kill Laurie Strode off in the most pathetic way in the first 10 minutes. It's a disgraceful handling of Jamie Lee Curtis's character, which has become iconic. It also follows a horribly convoluted explanation of why Michael's still alive, and Kevin Williamson, I hope you've apologised for that at some point. I already hate it after the first 10 minutes, and that is a worse situation to be in. I went to the theatres to watch this, and it was just the first 10 minutes I thought, you are going to have to do something incredible now to pull this back, and they didn't. You get this stereotypical early 2000s reality show concept with loathsome characters and Buster f***ing Rhymes doing karate.
Look at me!
It's actually, I'm seizing up thinking about how much I detest this movie. Busta Rhymes, Tyra Banks, they shouldn't be anywhere near a Halloween movie. It's a complete parody and a take of Michael and the franchise. I've nothing more to say. I could deep review this, but I think it would be a really sad hour. This movie should never have been made. So 5 years down the line, we get a different take on the Halloween concept, and that is by Rob Zombie, Halloween 2007. I am going to put this one in If You Say So. Now, it was lower than this before I thought about it a little bit. It does have a lot of negatives to it. I was interested to see what he was going to come up with when this came out. I went to watch this pretty much as soon as it came out. And straight away, again, you're hit with this horrible dialogue. It's such a difficult watch and a difficult listen. We know what Rob Zombie's scripts are like. I'm not a massive fan of his scripts or his writing. I think he's an absolutely exceptional filmmaker in terms of the visuals, his practical effects. I have respect for anybody that uses those over CGI. He knows how to make something look beautiful. Unfortunately, it's counteracted by some really, really hideous writing.
Man, that bitch got herself a nice little dumper.
To do something different, but I don't get why there has to be a backstory on Michael. Michael was evil for no reason. He was just born that. And that was terrifying in itself, because any person in this world can have a child, and if that happens, what do you do? It's a really frightening concept if you think about it, maternally, paternally, whatever. The thought of having a child that is just born evil, that is enough for me. You see, I started preferring the cult storyline over this nasty, trashy, shameless style childhood. I don't want to see Michael showing love or interacting as a human, and we get some of that in this. I think this is slightly higher on the list than it would have been, because the fact that Zombie does try something new. He doesn't just give us a complete replica. He does try to explore something new. And as a separate movie, this might work. But unfortunately, I think he ignores the Michael Myers character by trying to delve too deep. And the second half of the movie is just sort of a more violent, rushed version of the original. Like I said, I give him props for trying something different, but it just didn't work for me, really. You thought my review of Resurrection was bad. Let's bring in Amy Horror to talk about Halloween 2 from Rob Zombie from 2009.
I hate Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie. I am one of Rob Zombie's biggest defenders, I'd say, in terms of his other films. I don't think many of his films deserve the criticism that they get. I think he makes beautiful looking films, however, none of that comes through in Halloween 2. Halloween 2 is 100% my least favourite of the franchise. It's even worse than Resurrection in my opinion, so it's definitely going into...
It's going into The Evil Is Gone. If I could have a lower tier for Resurrection, I would, but do continue.
Thank you. So it's definitely going into The Evil Is Gone. I don't think there's any other place for it. I can't understand why anyone would willingly watch that film. I have watched Halloween 2 twice. The first time just so I could say I'd watched all the Halloween films, and the second time through a peak of insanity where I thought maybe it's not as bad as I remember. I thought maybe if I watch it with a completely unbiased view, I might enjoy it more, I might see some kind of redeeming features. There's none. There's absolutely no redeeming features whatsoever, except maybe the use of Love Hurts in the final scenes. Both versions, both the theatrical version and director's cut, terrible. I don't really think it makes much difference which one you watch. The only good thing about Halloween 2 was that it killed off that particular version of the franchise, that reimagining, and we didn't end up with Halloween 3D. I think even Rob Zombie's Halloween has its strong points. Not many of them, but it's still a bit more watchable than Halloween 2. They completely give up on making Samuel Loomis a likeable character at all. He's not a patch on the original.
Yeah, I didn't think they could damage Loomis any more than they did in 5, but yeah, he actually completely eclipses that.
And I like Malcolm McDowell, but he couldn't save the film. I don't like Scout Taylor Compton as Laurie. I don't find her believable. I know the film is supposed to be more about her and her kind of descent into madness after witnessing Michael butcher most of her family and her friends. I don't care about anything that happens to her. She is not a likeable character. Danielle Harris couldn't save the film, and she's been part of a couple of pretty terrible Halloween films. I don't even mind the violence per se in the films. I know a lot of people kind of criticise Rob Zombie's versions because they're a lot more brutal. You're going to get violence in a Rob Zombie movie, but that's not the worst part of the film. There's nothing enjoyable about Halloween 2.
Right, she's gone for a whiskey after that. So we're going to go straight into the reboot in 2018, Halloween 2018. This was a complete start again. We finish at Halloween 1978 and we restart in 2018. I was on board that because I didn't really like the original sequel, and the Cult of Thorn trilogy, that can stay on its own. If you want to watch it, it can be quite enjoyable. But I was happy to go from night one to so many years later. And Halloween 2018, that is going to go in one good scare. I loved this. For the majority of the movie, I had a smile on my face. I was very happy. It instantly feels like something special. I love the start with the mask and the asylum, and especially when the score kicks in as well and Michael starts feeling that, knowing what's going on behind him.
Say something!
That was a brilliant moment, a great start to the movie. It really got me into it, and a great route back to Haddonfield, very similar to Halloween 4. And then you get those lovely Halloween night visuals, perspective visuals that are a real throwback. It never feels like a carbon copy, it just feels like a tribute, which I think a lot of this final trilogy was. I will say Sartain felt unnecessary. I think maybe they needed a Loomis replacement for the years that he was gone, but I think his motives just seemed a little bit silly. I also think being so vengeful for 40 years after what was essentially about 10 minutes of trauma might be a bit far-fetched, but I think I can suspend the disbelief on that, because who are we to question how something affects somebody? And certainly the threat of him coming back and finishing the job is always there, and that sort of stuff can keep you up at night. And also she lost a lot of friends, which she probably wants some vengeance for, and knows that maybe one day that day will come, so I can overlook that. A great ending to the movie as well, with Michael seemingly burning in the basement. That could have been the end. They could have left it at that and we could never have had any more movies again, and I think people would have been satisfied. But a really solid out in 2018. Really enjoyed it. So the second in the reboot trilogy is Halloween Kills. Now this one I'm not as fond of. This divides opinion. Some people absolutely love this movie, others really don't. And some are just like, yeah, it's okay. It's kind of got everything, this movie, when it comes to reactions. But I'm going to put Halloween Kills in as a matter of fact. Now, it has a glorious opening, one of my favourite openings to any Halloween movie. Beautifully recreated the night in 1978. Loomis's appearance was a wonderful treat. I quote one YouTuber who said it was lovely of Donald Pleasance to come back from the dead to do this one scene. It was so well recreated, and I was very happy from the off with this movie. But unfortunately, I think after that, it just becomes very disjointed. It certainly lives up to its name. It's a movie where effectively Michael Myers is just killing everybody in sight. And for many, that's the main focus. That's what they come to watch a Halloween movie for. So it delivers in that sense. Evil Dies Tonight got annoying. I'll say annoying, borderline infuriating.
Evil dies tonight!
Evil dies tonight!
Evil dies tonight! Evil dies tonight!
I don't think Tommy suited that macho ringleader. I was never really happy with his depiction, and I think the mob mentality was not as realistic as it was in 4. I think it was over the top to the point where it made no sense. Everybody who's anybody, mob or not, could see that that mental patient was not Michael Myers. If it was Michael Myers, he certainly wouldn't be running away from them. He'd be heading in their direction, as is shown at the end of the movie. So I'm not buying that scene, and that whole hospital scene really drags this movie down, I think. The final kill is an entertaining finale, quite a shock as well. I don't think anybody really expected that. And it's certainly another one like 4, where it's seemingly impossible that he would survive what is done to him, and he manages to, but at least we do see some wear and tear in the following film, and this is where I'm probably going to upset an incredible amount of viewers. And we finish at the end, and more specifically, Halloween Ends. I'm putting Halloween Ends in one good scare. I don't think I've seen a movie divide or piss people off to the level this one did. So if I do upset you by putting it that high in the list, here's my reasons. Again, it's my personal opinion. Please don't get too irate about it. Just talk to me about it. I love comments from people and I love discussing movies. I wanted something, going into this movie, I wanted something a little different. I wasn't buying this standoff between Laurie and Michael, final showdown, to last the whole movie. I was not going to buy two 60-plus-year-olds facing off for 2 hours. I'm not saying that that is what we were going to get or we could have got, but I wanted something a little different to just Michael kills, Laurie and Michael fight, end. I believed it needed something different. I love the start of this movie. It is shocking and ballsy as well. I think, and I remember being in the theatre and the gasps and everything, I thought, oh, we're in for a movie here. I've got to say, I understand people being pissed off that we get this long story with Corey Cunningham. What they did, which I think was a mistake, was they didn't introduce him earlier on. If he'd have come in Kills, or even 2018, and he'd have been a kid in the background, just one of the side characters, and he kept getting sort of knocked down and bullied, or you could see like a deterioration in him, or you could see a darkness in him that was a bit weird, but he wasn't remotely relevant, he was just there, and then bring him out in the third one, I think this would have been received a little better. It's the fact that they introduced him like that in the final movie. That was a mistake, I believe. I do agree with having somebody to sort of open the door for Michael to be himself again after the damage he's obviously endured. He needed a way back, and he needed a poor, disturbed person to sort of do his bidding while he got back into the swing of it again, to go back and continue his pursuit of Laurie. And certainly with the connection that Corey had to Laurie, it was a perfect scenario for him. Completely agree, there is no way in hell that Michael should be being beaten down and pushed around by this kid. That was a bit of a stupid scene in my opinion. I get why they did it, because they want to show he's weak and this guy thinks he's going to be the next big thing, and I'm coming to take your crown now, you're finished. I get why they did it, but the visual of that was not satisfying for any Halloween fan. And maybe Michael isn't featured enough in this movie for the finale, for the very final movie of this whole saga. He maybe should have been featured a little more. How they would have done that, I don't know. Maybe they thought this was the maximum they could have shown him for what the story they were trying to tell. But I get that argument. I get every argument that people have against this movie. I did, however, love the finale. The final showdown was great. It was swift. It didn't drag on. The suicide implication was quite clever. I quite enjoyed that. I liked... I think that Corey sort of killing himself was a bit... Again, divides opinion, but maybe he thought this isn't working, I'm not as powerful as I thought I was. And then obviously Michael gets the final say anyway, and he takes over and goes for his moment. He just doesn't realise that Laurie is ready for him this time, and he gets more than he bargained for. I loved the flashback when he has her by the throat. I thought that was a great moment. It was sort of like I had my shoulders up at that point, I had my breath sucked in, I was ready for that, and I really liked that sort of culmination of all the years of pain sort of coming to a head in that moment. And every Halloween fan who loves Laurie Strode and loves her journey has to agree that she deserved that ending. Now, whether people wanted a more sadistic ending, I don't know, but I like the fact she finally got peace. And she got peace quite literally, because you get that lovely shot of all the rooms like you did in the first one, but this time without the breathing through the mask. I love the town coming together as well to get rid of him. I think that the latter stages of that movie are satisfying to me, not to many. I get why. So yeah, Halloween Ends is just below my top tier for me. I really enjoyed it. Maybe more people will enjoy it as the years go by, who knows. That was my tier list for the Halloween movies. Please put your comments in below if you disagree, agree, want to talk or discuss any of the movies I've mentioned in this video. Please smash a like and subscribe to the channel. I've got more and more things coming. But happy Halloween to all of you, and it has been a joy to do so much horror content during this wonderful time of year. Thanks guys, and I will see you soon on Primetime Mitch.